Renowned American football coach Tony Dungy once famously said, "The game has changed." He was of course referring to 2018's Monster Hunter World, which brought about significant transformation to Capcom's flagship video game series. Seamless maps replaced the loading screens that once segmented them, scout flies made monster tracking far more convenient than a paintball ever could, and Plesioth was never to be seen again, banished to Super Hell where he belongs, alongside Mecha Hitler and Jared from Subway. In 2025, Dungy said it again, only this time it was less widely reported because he did so alone in his own house. But I heard him because I was there, having broken in to use his toilet just moments earlier in what I can only describe as a gastrointestinal epic. He said this of course in reference to Monster Hunter Wilds, where the game had indeed changed again. Said changes were less dramatic than before, but no less significantly touted. So, you may wonder, how do I, with my anemic intellect and spotty attention span, possibly hope to wrap my head around this new breed of monster hunter? Well, I don't have either of those things, and did so easily in a matter of days, but let's talk about you instead. You're gonna need help, and that's why I made this, my guide to Monster Hunter Wilds for freaks. I am Fudj. My degree is in writing. My performance may struggle just a little bit. And let's get this out of the way. You probably do not need a guide for fighting monsters in this game. Monsters in Monster Hunter Wilds die to a light breeze. The closest an experienced player will get to death in Monster Hunter Wilds is during the cooking cutscene when your character eats an entire meal directly off a knife like a fucking insane person. What you may need a guide for is, well, everything else. If you're hoping to play online with friends in Monster Hunter Wilds, you'd best hope that your friends are Alan Turing, Mark Zuckerberg and Sherlock Holmes respectively. If you don't have a friend who reminds you of Mark Zuckerberg, I've got bad news for you, buddy. Monster Hunter Wilds' online functionality is designed like an MMO from 20 years ago, with players having to fuck around with so many links they may as well be playing Four Swords Adventures. Monster Hunter Wilds has made up for the lack of difficulty in its monster encounters by ensuring that reading its UI still requires some kind of neural implant, and that navigating its menu still demands 10 years of experience in JavaScript. Indeed, this game comes from the school of thought that being an easy game makes you an accessible game. This is a school for idiot babies, and it offers a degree only in shitting yourself and not understanding things. People said the same thing about Monster Hunter Rise, that it was the most accessible entry in the series. I guess because it was easier and it was on Switch? Because it definitely did not tutorialize itself better than previous Monster Hunter games. In fact, it might have done it worse. It basically just bombards you with wordy text boxes for the first few hours while a loud and distracting vocal hub theme plays in the background. Yeah, can we turn this down a bit, guys? I'm trying to read the fucking thing! I have been playing Monster Hunter since 4 Ultimate on the 3DS, and Rise explains itself so poorly that I was having trouble understanding mechanics it was telling me about that I had already used. Wilds, being made by the team who made Monster Hunter World and not Rise, which was made by the quote-unquote portable team, tutorializes itself a lot more like that game, which is to say better than Rise, at the very least, though I would argue not quite as good as World. My point here is that every time a new Monster Hunter game comes out, the discourse is the same. Pretty much every time, without fail, people proclaim it as the most accessible game in the series, and the perfect place to jump in. And in the case of Rise, I don't personally think that was ever true, and in the case of Wilds, yeah, that may be true. But as many things may change between entries, many others stay the same. Monster Hunter, even at its supposedly most accessible, will be unwieldy and hard to understand for newcomers, and making it so that the monsters keel over and die after you hit them 4 times doesn't change that. Of course, Monster Hunter Wilds has already broken records for Capcom and PC games in general. It's their new biggest game ever, breaking the record of previous title holder Monster Hunter World. Perhaps I am the idiot baby. Clearly, this is proof that Capcom's moves toward accessibility have worked, but I would attribute this to good marketing and a simultaneous launch on PC and consoles, the series first, as well as a generally hugely growing PC gaming market in the last 5 years, more so than anything. If you've already played the game, none of this is news to you, and also you've exhaled out of your nose at every joke so far. Thank you for your support. But if you've not yet taken the plunge, I just think this is something you should know. We can bluster all we want about how accessible a new Monster Hunter game is, but it's never actually been that accessible, and probably never will be. It's got an overwhelming number of systems, and enough mechanics to make a Cybertruck safe around pedestrians. Eventually, you are just going to have to throw yourself down this rabbit hole and thank yourself later. Because at the risk of sounding like a Persona fan, it really does get good after 20 hours. It's a known fact that the first few hours of Monster Hunter games tend to be a slog. If you're a new player, this could be because you're trying to get to grips with so many things at a time, but regardless of your experience level, it will almost always, in part, be due to the story. And never has that been more true than it is here. Monster Hunter Wilds actually does, in my opinion, have a marginally improved story over World and Rise and basically every other previous Monster Hunter game, but this is a bit like saying it's the tastiest crayon in my nephew's collection. It has a couple moments, but it's mostly repetitive and meandering and just serves to get you from point A to point B, Monster A to Monster B. The thing is that Wild's story is structured and delivered to you in a way much differently to previous games. It used to be that you'd hear that some monster was causing trouble for a nearby village, go accept a quest to deal with it, beat its brains in, and then find out there was another, bigger, badder one doing the same thing, and rinse and repeat 100 times. Now, story quests are initiated by talking to NPCs, which feels a lot less intuitive because you're often talking to them about things that don't feel particularly urgent. Like I talked to this guy Werner about repairing a forge, and suddenly within 5 minutes everything's on fire and I'm facing down a pair of Jarakan. The previous format of story quests was repetitive and uninspired, don't get me wrong, but the way it's laid out here is a lot more insistent. It took a long time for me to get used to the idea that just talking to an NPC about a seemingly mundane thing was actually going to railroad me into whacking a xenomorph with a giant trombone for the next 7 minutes. The quest I've just given as an example is one of the few that doesn't start with an automated walk and talk segment, by the way, which are now the norm for story quests. Yes, the PlayStation first-party symbiote has broken containment. This is a red alert. Attention all units. All AAA games think you want to lose control of the game to be talked at by NPCs for minutes on end now, even ones literally called Monster Hunter. So here's my first tip for surviving Monster Hunter Wilds. The best part of the game is the credits. No, I'm serious. Congratulations! The end credits of a Monster Hunter game are actually the opening credits. You've slogged through low rank and finally the story is ready to give you some space and stop asking where its hug is, and the game Monster Hunter is supposed to be can begin in earnest. Monster Hunter Wilds' story is certainly more thought out and considered than previous entries, but the way it's structured, the way it's delivered to you, is more suffocating than ever before. Despite this, series producer Ryozo Sugimoto has chalked the game's record-setting success down to said story, which is a bit like crediting the success of a train to the granola bars sold on the front carriage. Monster Hunter Wilds does get good after 20 hours. It gets good in high rank after the credits roll, because while I have had a lot of veiled criticisms for this game so far, and will likely continue to do so, it is still Monster Hunter. Therefore, it is good. The core loop of Monster Hunter is the sliced bread of video game design. You just can't beat it. You can only iterate on it. And thus, Monster Hunter games, for as long as they don't do anything stupid, will continue to have a very high floor of quality. I'm sorry, what was that? Did that cat just talk like a fucking human?
Leave this to me! Heels inbound!
Oh nah. Nah, 0 stars. Tip number 2, your cat is not a human, okay? Capcom keep trying to make the cat talking like a human a thing. Look at Monster Hunter Stories. Capcom, stop trying to make the cat talking like a human happen. No one wants that. What makes a cat cute is that it is a cat. Look at Ted. He is cute because he is a cat. Look at me. I am not cute because I am not a cat. Boyishly handsome, yes, but still not a cat. I don't know what's getting in the water over there at Capcom to make them think the Palicos will get cuter if they talk like people instead of making cat noises, but someone needs to cut off their supply stat. So there's a tip for objectively improving your Monster Hunter Wilds experience. You can change your Palico's voice back to cat noises in the settings. Okay, back to Monster Hunter being good. As I said earlier, I've been playing Monster Hunter since 4 Ultimate on 3DS, which I was hooked on right up until I lost my copy after the first fight with the Gormagala. Even back then, when combat was clunky and traversal was glacial, Monster Hunter at its core was fun and addicting. That's always been how it's stuck with players despite consistently middling stories and increasingly antiquated gameplay mechanics. And, you know, antiquated as its game feel may have been at times, it did offer up a genuinely unique identity. The way that you couldn't run and use a potion at the same time, the limited roll directions and the need to tag a monster with a paintball to track it. These were, at a time, intentional decisions that distinguished Monster Hunter from any other similar action RPGs. It's wild to look at Monster Hunter and Dark Souls and think that they're kind of the same genre, right? Or Monster Hunter and Kingdom Hearts? What commonalities do they even share, aside from being written by aliens? And many people, likely those who look back fondly on AOL dial-up and measles, pine for the day that Monster Hunter will return to its roots. But crushingly, inevitably, the future had to come. And it came all over us in the form of Monster Hunter World. The many ways that combat and traversal evolved to become more fluid and intuitive are well documented and have even been referenced in the opening of this very video, so you know that combat was still good and in fact, in my opinion, got objectively better. But World at long last brought another significant wrinkle to Monster Hunter's leathery skin. It brought a little something we call vibes. A little under a year ago I went to a Burger King in Southend-on-Sea. A Burger King that I explicitly remember visiting as a tiny child, because with every meal came a cross-promotional toy meant to market the first Pokemon movie. These toys were plush Pokeballs that you could open up to reveal a soft Pokemon toy inside. Supposedly, there was one for every single Pokemon in the original 150. Knowing this, I rushed up to the counter when it was my turn and excitedly asked the woman working at the counter if they could give me Aerodactyl. She said she'd try. 10 minutes later, before even looking at my food, I unzipped the Pokeball like a kid unwrapping their biggest present on Christmas Day. It was Poliwhirl. Despite my momentary dismay, I look back on this memory fondly, because Southend-on-Sea was a lively, dare I say beautiful place, and this was an exciting time in my life. The streets, even the restaurants, were packed with people, all of whom seemed 10 feet tall and all of whom just seemed to be smiling all the time. When I revisited this Burger King just recently as an adult and went to the upstairs section with my meal, I found it entirely empty and eerily quiet. The sun did not shine through the windows, laughter did not fill the room. The only sound to be heard was that of a lone, overworked cashier barking delivery orders at the kitchen staff from downstairs, and when she couldn't be heard, it was like being at church, only somehow more depressing. Every bite I took of that chicken royale felt like some kind of confession to a god I did not acknowledge, that I was a loser in a loser town, which was actually now legally a city, only awarded such status because our MP, or Member of Parliament, had been stabbed to death in said town not long ago. The vibes in this Burger King were only slightly worse than the vibes in the average Monster Hunter map from 4U and before. The comments will get mad at me. They'll insist that that's not true and that the locales from classic Monster Hunter were full of soul. They'll be blinded by nostalgia. The maps in classic Monster Hunter were designed with combat in mind first and foremost, and so many of the areas are just vacuous, wide open liminal spaces for you to fight monsters in and maybe have an underwhelming chicken royale. But Monster Hunter was evolving, and with World, its locales, more so than anything, did just that. It was efficient and intelligent for classic Monster Hunter locales to be designed in the way they were, but it also ensured that these games, enjoyable as they may have been, were little more than elaborate boss rushes when you looked under the hood. With the advent of World, the locales were more than that. They made up, well, a world. Teeming with life and bristling with to-be-made discoveries, Monster Hunter had a second thing. Maybe I enjoy these elements of the game more than most, but I believe the vibes of these games have genuinely become just as much a reason to check them out as the combat. It is so relaxing, so soothing to just hang out in these worlds. Not just the locales, but the hubs and villages too. The player room was a big part of this. Your own private home base within the hub itself, complete with chill music and impeccable vibes. The player room, crucially, was also a place for you to display the endemic life, or small little animals you'd captured out in the locales, as well as any fish you caught. It was a great way to reward the player for their exploration and their engaging with other mechanics beyond fighting monsters. Between this and all the various side missions and achievements that reward you for catching certain fish and endemic life, there was now a reason to just hang out in these beautiful maps, to look around and explore. This was the world in Monster Hunter World, and it was only the tip of the iceberg. When you capture a large monster in Monster Hunter World, you can see it physically restrained back at the hub and get a chance to look at it closer, complete with all the wounds you may have caused it during the fight. But my absolute favourite thing Monster Hunter World did to immerse you, this subtle little touch that I hear basically no one talk about, is the way that the locales changed if there was an Elder Dragon present. Elder Dragons, the toppest tier of powerful monsters, are classified as such because they are forces of nature beyond human understanding. We're told that they warp the very environment around them when they appear, but only in Monster Hunter World, not even in its follow-up, Rise, do we see that. You can visibly see heat waves in the air when a Teostra is present in Wildspire Waste. When there's a Kirin in the Coral Highlands, the skies are stricken with thunderstorms. It's incredible. It's the most effectively you've ever been sold on the power of these creatures. So while a certain quirky charm was lost in the transition from the 4th generation of Monster Hunter to the 5th, I believe the changes made trend far more positive than negative. Yes, the locales lost their laser focus on combat, and so some can occasionally feel boxed in and claustrophobic. It is true that fighting a Kushala Daora in the ancient forest is akin to fighting a bull-kicking machine as a giant testicle, but I would argue that even the core experience of monster hunting still comes out better. Tagging a monster with a paintball was a nifty and immersive, if bothersome, mechanic, but how about scout flies? How about picking up a monster's tracks and finding traces of their presence all over the area to the point that your scout flies can accurately discern exactly where they are, causing their little icon to pop up on your map so you can pin it and head right over there and continue to track them even after they run away. This move to a more detailed world helped the player fantasy of hunting, in my opinion, and while combat and traversal became more convenient, they certainly didn't lack difficulty or intrigue. In my opinion, Monster Hunter World achieved a perfect balance. For better and for worse, Monster Hunter Wilds doubles down, triples down on World's design philosophy. Let's start with the better. The environmental changes caused by the presence of the Elder Dragons in World is now a key focal point of Monster Hunter Wilds design. Every locale you can go to, in fact, now has 3 different states. The fallow is where everything is peaceful, if not a little gloomy and unspectacular, a calm before the storm. The calm after the storm is the season of plenty, where every locale looks at its best, burgeoning and blossoming at every angle, and the proverbial storm itself is the inclemency, huge map-changing events directly caused by the presence of each area's apex predator. The sand tide and the ensuing lightning strikes and swirling skies in Windward Plains are a sign that the Rey Dow is present, for example, and the downpour in the Scarlet Forest is the doing of Uth Duna. When you're just out there in the world and this starts happening organically, when you're just hanging out in the Windward Plains and the sky starts to darken, lightning begins to crackle and the entire vibe changes, complete with subtle, ominous music cues, well, to put it in layman's terms, it gets my absolute nut off. It's exactly the kind of stuff I wanted to see more of after World. Wilds also corrects one of World's most glaring flaws, which is that the monster roster was often grasping at straws, with lots of birds and lizards with similar claws and a couple fish monsters that we simply endured. Yes, beyond the roars and moors, there was little distinguishing this smorgasbord of bipedal dragons and dinosaurs, so when Wilds came along and did what it did by bestowing upon us some spiders and squid, it was fair to say that that was cause for applause. It also brought back the fart monkey, so thanks for that as well, I guess. Indeed, World's battles, for as fun as they were, could often feel a little repetitive. The insane scope of the game and the many meaningful changes it brought to the Monster Hunter formula meant that very few unique monster skeletons, or body types, made it into the final game. The Lagiacrus, a Leviathan, was even shown off in some prototype footage of Monster Hunter World, and yet the monster was never actually in the game, because the developers supposedly couldn't get the Leviathan skeleton working in World. As such, almost everything was a dragon or dragon shaped, and if it wasn't, then fighting it probably wasn't very fun. Then Monster Hunter Wilds came along and defied every call against diversity under the sun with the most varied launch roster of any Monster Hunter game to date. Capcom have not come out and said that the Dushagama travel in packs because they enjoy same-sex relations with one another, but I think it'd be funny to collectively pretend that they have and see who it pisses off. And with the introduction of the cephalopods, Monster Hunter Wilds brings us our first new monster type since Monster Hunter 4 brought us spiders and snake wyverns, of which there is still technically only one. New Udra is truly awesome, and I'm a big fan of seeing more unique monsters like this, though with the extent to which he does not put up a fight and goes down like a sack of potatoes, I'm beginning to worry that he may have been a DEI hire after all. Still though, Monster Hunter Wilds diversity keeps its fights feeling meaningfully different, in theory. We'll get to it. And the focus on new monsters and ones that haven't been in Monster Hunter for a couple generations has things feeling fresh. Also, while I implied earlier that classic Monster Hunter was kinda just an elaborate boss rush, there is another element of that game loop worth mentioning, which I'll refer to as Fashion Hunter, that I think everyone, especially Dark Souls players, will understand. Crafting armor and equipment is of course inextricably linked to hunting monsters, but kitting out your player exactly to your liking, and maybe even mixing and matching armor sets in the pursuit of creating a new aesthetic no one else has come up with yet, is so tantalizing that it becomes its own intrinsic motivation for the player beyond just beating the final boss, and adds another dimension to the core monster hunting. Classic Monster Hunter games motivated players to do this brilliantly, with colourful, diverse and artful weapon and armour designs bursting at the seams of every DS cartridge and PSP disc. But when Monster Hunter came to big boy, not Wii U home consoles for the first time with Monster Hunter World, Fashion Hunter, as we knew it, seemed to stumble for the first time. Most weapon designs, at least in base Monster Hunter World, kinda sucked. So many of them clearly just using the template of the basic bone weapons with a few feathers or scales from whatever monster's parts you were using slathered on there like some kind of primary school art project. To put it in layman's terms, they did not get my nut off. The first time I saw that the fully upgraded Tobi-Kadachi dual blades I'd been pining for looked like this, my nut was firmly on. This stung especially considering that Monster Hunter World did not launch with layered weapons, i.e. the ability to give a weapon the appearance of another whilst retaining the stats of the original, much less layered armour. Monster Hunter Wilds did not launch with layered weapons, and it absolutely did not need to, because the designs here are as good as the classic games have ever had. I'm particularly a fan of many of the Yarn Kut-Ku weapons, just having a comedy Yarn Kut-Ku bobblehead mounted on them like some kind of comedy circus prop. And the armour designs are fantastic, as is to be expected, but the Palico armour in this game is something else. I mean the new Udra Palico armor, the Archean Palico armor, the Rompopolo Palico armor. They have pushed the boat out so hard on the Palico armor in this game in particular. This is a series with a final boss where a giant bug builds a fucking Megazord to fight you with, and I think the Rompopolo Palico armor might be the craziest thing it's ever done. Fashion Hunter is alive and well in Monster Hunter Wilds, as should be evidenced by almost everyone's character, as I hope should be evidenced by my character. Yes, I do look a bit like Heracross from Pokemon. When I built the Rompopolo Lance and noticed that it was designed to resemble a syringe, I set out to be a crazy doctor man, but I did not like the look of the full Rompopolo armor set and think just building an entire armor set and your weapon off the same monster is lame, and thus resolved to be a crazy bug man upon unlocking the Great Beetle armor set. My syringe is my stinger, my Palico in his full Gormagala armor is my freaky gremlin assistant. These are the miracles of character creation only achievable with great weapon and armor design, and layered armor, which Wilds also has at launch and World didn't. Alas, Monster Hunter Wilds is a complicated one. It also did not launch with a lot of stuff I loved about World, notably the player room, which as of recording is not in the game and leaves the very existence of endemic life feeling pretty shallow. The maps are bigger and there's more endemic life in this game than even in World, but what's the point if I don't have a place for my 40 assorted geckos to hang out in? I have full confidence that a player room will come in a future update, but having to wait at least over a month after release for it when there's more focus on the endemic life and environments than ever before kinda stings a bit, especially when the main game is so easy to blast through as is, which again we will get to. Monster Hunter games nowadays release with the cadence of a Christopher Walken sentence. Back in the day we used to only get the ultimate or full version of the games in the West, so we were used to the first version of it we got our hands on being full of content, but now that there's a simultaneous release we are forced to endure the same cycle the Japanese players do, albeit with much worse Wi-Fi and fewer toilets with built-in bidets, which isn't really relevant, but I am very jealous of. Monster Hunter is always good, but it only really becomes great when the expansion comes along to round it out and smooth over all its rougher edges. At launch, Monster Hunter Wilds' supposed final boss can only be fought once at the end of low rank and has no weapons or armor set associated with it. This may seem pretty baffling, but a not entirely dissimilar thing happened with the final boss of Rise, with an even truer version being released in a later update. This is the new normal for Monster Hunter, unfortunately, but patience is a virtue. All the things we love surely will come, but as is the case with World lacking layered armor and Rise lacking a conclusive ending, compromises often have to be made to ship these mammoth games out on time. Speaking of mammoth games, we were told in the lead up to release that Monster Hunter Wilds would have more monsters on launch than World. This has turned out to not be true. Now, you know me, there's nothing I hate more than being pedantic. Well, okay, there's a few things I hate more than being pedantic. There's multiple things I hate more than being pedantic, including but not limited to React channels, sparkling water, and the neoliberal world order, but Monster Hunter World actually had 30 unique monsters on launch, and Wilds has 29. I know there's certainly something to be said about diversity, but it's not like some of the monsters in the Wilds roster aren't kinda cheating too. I mean, Guardian Doshagama? Guardian Rathalos? And not a Gammoth in sight? Look at this ice map. This is so not built for Gammoth. They're really not going to bring Gammoth back, are they? It's been like 8 years. All the other Fated 4 have come back. Mizutsune is already in Wilds again, but no justice for Gammoth. Wasn't enough for her kind to be wiped out in real life. Now we can't even get them in video games. For shame, Capcom. Wild's relatively sparse monster roster at launch is probably a big contributor as to why some people have been left feeling a little underwhelmed after finishing high rank, but I'd argue, as I think many would, that there's a much bigger contributor to that as well. So let's finally get to the big issue. Let's address the elephant in the room. The elephant that isn't a mammoth. Let's talk about difficulty. But let me first talk to you about Palette Swap merch. That's right, Palette Swap merch. We now have a merch store open over at paletteswap.shop. We now have a merch store open over at paletteswap.shop, and we ain't selling you any slop, only the kinds of things that will make people stop and say, is that a fucking Final Fantasy 9/11 shirt? Yes it is. And as the only non-American member of the team, I'd like to assure you that this was not my idea, that I do naught but stare solemnly and shake my head every time I see it, and that it's actually the Yanks on the team who get a real kick out of it. Also, it was designed by a Canadian, and given the current state of international relations, I think you kind of got to let them get their licks in. If you're feeling a little more PG-13, we've also got Palette Swap logo merch like pins and stickers and shirts and hats, onto which the Palette Swap logo, expertly designed upon our inception by editor Joe Tillelli, has translated beautifully, by the way, and my personal favourite, the Licking Tongues Lickitung x Rolling Stones t-shirt. This is only the beginning for the Palette Swap merch store, and we've got tons of incredible curios, including but not limited to a shirt featuring Ken from Street Fighter beating up a Cybertruck coming your way in the near future. If you enjoy what we do and want to support us and get some sweet shit that may or may not get you attacked on the street by a patriotic American along the way, then the Palette Swap merch store at paletteswap.shop might just be the place to do it. Link will be in the description. What will also be linked in the description will be the Palette Swap Patreon, which you could also check out if you want access to some sweet subscriber benefits rather than a sweet t-shirt. We offer early access to videos, names in video credits, monthly voting on the greatest hits section of our website, access to our subscriber exclusive Discord, among many other things for as little as $5 a month. A reminder that we at Palette Swap are a worker-owned business with no executives, no AI, and only one British person. So if that's a cause you feel like supporting, then we greatly appreciate any monetary help you can give us, as we are largely funded by our ever generous patrons. That's patreon.com/paletteswapmag. And our full website, on which you can exhale out of your nose at our many articles if you don't want to have to keep up with Twitter, Blue Sky and Instagram, is paletteswap.site. Thank you so much should you choose to support us in any way. Monster Hunter Wilds has the best combat in series history. For 5 minutes. Then you win. If you look at a monster the wrong way in Monster Hunter Wilds, it dies. This is the easiest Monster Hunter has ever been by a long way. When I played Monster Hunter Rise, my biggest complaint was that the game was too easy, and everything was going down with little trouble in about 20 minutes or so. And now, how I pine for those halcyon days of 20-minute fights. If something takes you 20 minutes to kill in Monster Hunter Wilds, you're either new to the series, it was the hardest thing you fought in the entire game, or you took a business call midway through an Arkfeld combo and likely survived until you put the phone down. The difficulty, or lack thereof, was a big point of order in pre-release reviews, which in the online community unleashed an onslaught of discourse, which, as you guys know, I love. At least this one wasn't about girls kissing or black people existing. Many were saying that this happens with every Monster Hunter game, that it's a cycle that repeats every time a new one releases, largely because people are getting better at the games as they build up experience with the series. Many were saying that Monster Hunter is always easy at launch, and that you have to wait until post-launch updates and especially the inevitable expansion for Master Rank and the higher difficulty fights to come through. Worryingly, no one was there, even after release, to say, everybody shut the fuck up, this is clearly different. But now, here I am. Because Monster Hunter Wilds is something else. In my humble opinion, difficulty should not be, and has in fact not previously been, exclusive to the expansions. There were fights in base Monster Hunter World that achieved a reasonable level of difficulty well before Iceborne came along, before even any post-release updates. Practically everything in Monster Hunter Wilds goes down with little trouble in between 8 to 10 minutes. Even its supposed final boss is, which end up hugely underwhelming as a result. There are many culprits in this most heinous crime. Monsters in general seem less aggressive and appear to have smaller health pools, but the secret, focus mode and the wound system in particular have come together to form a damning chalk outline upon which the game has dramatically fallen. The secret is like the Palamute from Monster Hunter Rise. If it somehow went faster, if you didn't even need to control it, and if it could pick you up right after getting hit in a manner debatably more efficient than Rise's already game-breaking wirefall mechanic. The secret redefines the very meaning of Monster Hunter. You are no longer the hunter hunting the monsters, you are the monster, and you are hunting. The monsters are no longer bosses, but side characters. Charming but easily disposable mooks at best. They're like the demons in Doom. You are not trapped in here with them, they are trapped in here with you. Because when a monster runs away, my secret should not be able to chase it so fast that I overtake it. It shouldn't be able to catch up so effectively that the AI bugs out and just has to stop and run in circles on the spot because I've caught up to it while it's still moving. Focus mode allows you to aim your attacks with more accuracy than ever before by changing the direction you're facing mid-animation. In a sense, this is a quality of life change because many have complained about how animations lock you into one position, making it a big commitment and causing the game's combat, even in World onwards, to still feel a little bit clunky. This is an element of clunk, in my opinion, that did not need to change. Attacks should be a commitment. You kids these days are too scared to get down on one knee, bust out the ring and resign yourself to 50 years of that attack in that one place, but that's how it should be. You think Dark Souls would be anywhere near the game it was if you could just fucking change your mind mid-attack and put it somewhere else? No, classic Gen Z. No one wants to work anymore. Focus mode is yet another game-changing tool in a long line of game-changing tools, starting with World and ramping up hugely in Rise, that have been given to the player, with the monsters comparatively getting nothing to compensate. What we had before focus mode was good clunkiness. Justice for the clunk. But the wound system surely bears the most responsibility for the way that 2025's monsters are all just getting their brains bashed in. It's pretty simple. You hit a monster enough in a certain place and a wound, or a glowing weak spot you can see while in focus mode, forms. Hit that glowing weak spot with the right button and it explodes for massive damage, sometimes even toppling the monster over, giving you a chance to hit them even more, create even more wounds, and then destroy them all over again, damning them to an endless purgatory of stun-locking wound destruction. It is insane how much damage the player puts out with the new wound system in place. It is fun, don't get me wrong. It's a huge contributor to why the game feel is so good. I mean, that sound effect you get when you pop a wound has me ready to roll over on the floor and make some noises myself. But it is also perhaps the most evil and sadistic as a hunter I have ever felt. The swiftness with which you can bludgeon these creatures now has well and truly crossed the Rubicon. It always hurt my soul when a monster, no matter how evil, began limping away from me upon reaching 20% health, whimpering as it terrifiedly drags itself back to its nest. But now, when it's been 5 uninterrupted minutes of bashing their kneecaps into a fine dust without even letting them get a single attack off, when I can finish the job right there and then by hopping on my sacred at 90 miles an hour and cut them off, brutalizing them to a permanent end before they can even make it. This feels bad, man. My advice to you is to be ready to check your feelings at the door. Leave all emotion behind. Ensure before playing Monster Hunter Wilds that you are ready to be a senseless killing machine. Or maybe you've got some issues to work out and you couldn't afford a rage room. I don't know. Remember, you're a monster hunter. The sacred, focus mode, the wound system, this could surely all stay if the monsters had been made more threatening or were generally balanced around it, but they're not. I would like for the wound system to stick around, but I would also like to see the moves the monster has that they tried to hit me with. Some balancing is surely necessary down the line, because if it doesn't come, every encounter is going to end up feeling like a bit of a wet fart. And trust me, I've had enough of that feeling over the years. My suggestion, Capcom? The hunter should be able to get wounds too. A Gravios rolling over on me should shatter my collarbone and break my leg in 5 places. A Gormagala shoulder tackling me should give me 20 years of CTE and ruin my relationship with my wife and kids. If somehow you are having trouble with monsters in Monster Hunter Wilds, I'm fairly certain I even have a tip that can trivialize these fights for you in a way that not even focus mode and the wound system can. Go for the gooch. Right now you're wondering, what the hell is the gooch? The gooch is a British term generally used in the mid to late 2010s. It is a gender-neutral term generally referring to this area. Monsters in Monster Hunter Wilds, more so than almost any previous entry, have next to no counterplay to a hunter being all up in their gooch. especially the new cephalopod monsters who have poor hitboxes directly in front of them. If new Udra attempts to run away while you're up in his gooch, you might just get stuck there, still able to attack repeatedly as he unwittingly pulls you along in the same direction. Trust me, this works in almost every game where you fight enemies significantly larger than yourself, but it is particularly true in Monster Hunter Wilds. When in doubt, go for the gooch. But wait, there's more! Because you forgot about the Power Charm and Armor Charm, didn't you? Consider this an honorary tip 4.5. The Power Charm and Armor Charm are items that increase your attack power and defensive capabilities whenever they're in your inventory. I'll be real, I don't remember how I got them. I was just sifting through my inventory at some point while fighting tempered monsters in Monster Hunter Wilds, and there they were. I'm pretty sure I remember getting them in World and Rise, but since I was squashing everything in the game whilst barely even needing to upgrade or improve my armor in Wilds, it never even occurred to me that I might need them. This is literally an objective passive buff to your attack and defense. You don't even need to do anything with them. You just plop them into your inventory and there you are. Check your inventory for the Power Charm and Armor Charm. You might have forgotten them. Confession time. I was a dinosaur kid. A shocking revelation, I know, especially considering the story I told you earlier in which I expressly asked for a soft toy of Aerodactyl of all original 150 Pokemon at Burger King. But growing up, I was obsessed with them. I just thought they were the coolest thing ever. Confession time. I still think that. I am a dinosaur adult. Dinosaurs and dragons and giant kaiju monsters are the coolest thing ever, and I'm tired of pretending that they're not. As such, I obsess over the design and ecology of the monsters in Monster Hunter games. And surprise, surprise, in Wilds, they've knocked it out of the park yet again, with some extremely cool, detailed, and surprisingly true-to-life creations. You can tell that the design team are knowledgeable on some of the crazier creatures that exist in real life and are using them as inspiration for their new monsters, creating some truly awesome stuff in the process, especially the new regional apexes, which I think the game quite understandably puts quite a heavy spotlight on. On top of everything else, new Udra's sound effects are top notch, so rubbery and squelchy and unlike anything else in the game, and when he retreats to his nest to sleep towards the end of the fight, provided you haven't already killed him before he gets there, you'll find him bundled up into a tight space with only a single tentacle protruding out. Surely a reference to how well known real life cephalopods are for squeezing in and out of tight spaces and, for example, escaping from wildlife enclosures. My praise for this game's sound design, which I really cannot overstate, by the way, extends to Ray Dow. His weirdly tinny, almost robotic aircraft-like sounds are so much more interesting than the generic monster roars, and complement beautifully with his ability to conjure storms and also turn his head into a fucking railgun if you haven't seen that before. There's a really neat touch in the main story wherein you discover that a village of locals native to the Windward Plains, Ray Dow's hunting grounds, actually use some of its scales as chimes, which create sounds just like the creature when the winds blow, fending off any other would-be monsters and keeping the village safe. Jindahard is just about the only monster that restored the feeling for me. The only monster that carted me more than once when I fought it in high rank. This gigantic leviathan feels more like the final boss than the actual final boss, and the way that he traverses the map and interacts with the environments across all three phases of his fight is truly brilliant. If leaks are to be believed, getting Jindahard to even work in the game may have been what delayed some other monsters from making it in for launch, so demanding was the technical work his implementation required. If that's the case, I almost want to say it was worth it. Almost. Uthduna is... well, you can't win them all, can you? My favourite monster in Monster Hunter history is Namielle from Monster Hunter World Iceborne. I could geek out about this thing for days. The countless ways in which its design evokes the deep sea, the bioluminescence, the wings that cover it like a raincoat, the head shape that resembles a manta ray, and not to mention the incredible battle theme. Uthduna is like, what if you made Namielle without any of the stuff that made Namielle cool? What if we made a big fish who just belly flopped for 15 minutes straight to sourceless music? See this? Yeah? Well, congratulations, you've basically just experienced the entire Uthduna fight. I bring all this stuff up, well, at least I bring up most of this stuff, to enforce to you what a shame it is that in a lot of scenarios, These monsters just die with little trouble in 15 minutes max. Before you've gotten a chance to appreciate all these cool touches, all the inspired work that's gone into making them believable, complex, lovingly crafted creatures. Monsters in Monster Hunter are like roller coasters. Your enjoyment of them is proportional to how much they make you fear for your own life. And I want to like the new monsters in Monster Hunter Wilds so much, but they instill zero fear in me. And you can never truly like something you don't respect. That's not a tip for Monster Hunter Wilds, but it is a tip for real life. Remember that one. A lot of the enjoyment in Monster Hunter, I believe, is found through intrinsic motivation, which I brought up earlier, setting your own goals to achieve beyond just finishing the story. Some people clear every quest, collect every armor set, or craft every weapon. Some people, who do frankly need other hobbies, grind to Hunter rank 500 before even the first title update is launched, robbing themselves of any potential feeling of further progression for the remaining 3 or so years the game has left before another one comes out, and then complain on Twitter that the game has no content. Me? After finding myself a little let down by how easy Monster Hunter Rise and even its expansion Sunbreak were, I stumbled upon its photo mode in the menus by chance, and I set out to take pictures. More so than even a monster hunter, I have become a master monster photographer. You wanna see? Alright then, here's Fudge's thing within a thing. This is my collection of pictures from Sunbreak, Monster Hunter Rise's expansion. For some reason I can't remember, the pictures from the base game didn't save to the Switch library and I couldn't be bothered to boot up the game and my capture card just to get those first few pictures. I endeavoured to get a different mood and composition for every picture and went in more or less the order you encounter the monsters on the critical path, so different times of day, locales, and meaningfully different poses wherever possible. Rise's photo mode isn't great. You can't pause to take a good photo or edit in post in really any way, but at the very least you can shoot rapid fire and then just pick the best one from however many you took while getting your ass knocked off the palamute every 20 seconds. I wound up getting good pictures that I was happy with for every single monster in Monster Hunter Rise and its expansion Sunbreak, which wound up being 78. God, I hope Wilds ends up with a number like that. As is the case for both Rise and Wilds, this was just a fun little something to do beyond just fighting monsters all the time. Especially because both games, unfortunately, are so easy that I kinda wound up yearning for a way to get more out of them after I was done dog walking every monster in however many minutes, or however few minutes. I regret to inform you that Wilds yet again takes a step down from Rise with its photo mode. It does allow you to pause to get a better shot, which is nice, but you can't move the frame or do like almost anything once you have, so you kind of have to just hope you pause on the perfect shot, and if you don't pause for a shot, be prepared for the picture to come out in awful resolution. Like, everything looks like it's at 480p max if you don't pause for the shot, worse than anything in Rise ever looked, and that thing was on Switch. Furthermore, because the Xbox Series X, which is what I played this game on, I know, don't bully me in the comments, gives you a notification every time a screenshot is saved to the console, it means you can't take pictures rapidly because you have to wait for the notification to go away before you take another picture. There's not even UI in the gallery to tell you what monster the picture is of and where it was taken. Still though, thanks to the pause feature, it's still possible to get some really incredible pictures in this game. The Lullabarina picture is one of my favourites, and I got an amazing cameo of a Balahara in the background of my Ray Dow picture. Look at this guy. Look how fucking weird he is. Also, can we take another look at that Narcilla picture real quick? This is like midway through the attack where she flies towards you from a web on the ceiling. She is like right up in my face here. I challenge anyone to get a better picture of the Narcilla, freaky facial details and all, than this. Photo mode is something I've become very fond of in games lately, especially if and when I find that I'm done with them sooner than I'd hoped and want a better excuse to appreciate its details. I put together a similar gallery for New Pokemon Snap when that came out just to get some more time out of a game that I love so much, and I actually showed off said gallery in a similar way in our last video on the top 10 Switch exclusives, so hey, maybe go check that out after this if you've got time. The whole editing team and myself worked together on it, and I think it's pretty good if I do say so myself, and I do. I do say so myself. I just did. Okay, I have one last large bone to pick with Monster Hunter Wilds. Much was made in the hype cycle of Monster Hunter Wilds of its newly open world. No longer were just the locales seamless, but the entire world map. There'd no longer be a loading screen separating the hub or village from any of the locales, for example. This is all certainly true, and now you can set up pop-up camps to restock yourself and cook meals and stay out in the field for longer. In theory, this sounds pretty cool, but so does beach sex, and then you get sand and I'm not doing this joke. In practice, Monster Hunter Wilds' supposed open world sensibilities are pointless, like being circumcised during beach sex. Oh, it was just foreskin you were worried about? Think again. The much lauded ability to travel on foot from one locale to another doesn't end up factoring into the game whatsoever. You can very easily, with just a couple presses of a buttons on the minimap, fast travel to anywhere in the game, including any pop-up camp you've established from anywhere in the game. And for the most part, the connective tissue between the areas is naught but an empty corridor with nothing of note to see or interact with. The one big exception I've found to this is the path from the Ice Shard Cliffs to the ruins of Wyveria. I mean, look at this. It's incredible, isn't it? Look at the grandness of the architecture, the dramatic views everywhere. It's hard to believe that this doesn't have any relevance to the story, or that it won't in any future update or expansion. I mean, this could be a final boss area if the space wasn't so small, or the final boss was 5'11". Alas, the one point in the main story during which the player goes from the Ice Shard Cliffs to the ruins of Wyveria, or near enough, you are teleported between locations against your will, and never made aware of the existence of this location. I guess you could argue that makes it a cool secret if you feel like being particularly disputatious, which as a YouTube commenter you likely do. I mean, let's be real, you've been trying to find shit to pull me up on this whole video, haven't you? But to that I'd say, why just this area? And why do the others feel so completely inconsequential? It's just weird. If you wanted to encourage on-foot travel between the areas, you'd need to do stuff like this between almost every one. Instead, you've just done it once? Take a monster like Rathalos, who can be found in both the Scarlet Forest and the Oilwell Basin. Imagine midway through your battle with the Rathalos, it flees from the Scarlet Forest to the Oilwell Basin. You still don't necessarily have to chase it, you could just fast travel to whatever pop-up camp is closest to where it's going, but you'd at least be a little more behooved to directly travel between areas than you are already. In fact, this feels like the bare minimum to motivate me to manually travel through this impressively open world. It feels like what it was designed for, but such a mechanic is non-existent. I want to be clear on this, Monster Hunter Wilds locales are awesome. 4 of Monster Hunter Wilds locales are awesome. The Oilwell Basin, to me, is a highlight, by far the most creative of the bunch, a far more novel concept for a hot, fiery climate than just another volcano, but the Scarlet Forest, especially in the Season of Plenty, ranks up there with Elden Ring's Divine Towers and Sonic Adventure 2's Rouge the Bat amongst the most beautiful things I've seen in video games. Look at the blueness of that water. The waters of the Cornish Riviera in southern England aren't that blue. And the only monsters are the locals. Ew, that's what you get for voting leave, you silly cunts. In terms of sheer conceptual magic, there may not quite be a locale in Monster Hunter Wilds that measures up to Monster Hunter World's Coral Highlands or Rotten Vale, but these areas, denser and more explorable than ever, are a delight to hang out in. And they're only going to get better. So my 5th and final tip to you, dear viewer, is as follows. Don't let a video game tell you what to do. Don't let a video game tell you that your cat should sound like a human. Don't let a video game tell you that the best part's over when the characters leave you alone. Don't let a video game stop you from just hanging the fuck out and enjoying some me time. Monster Hunter Wilds has some of the best hanging the fuck out the series will surely ever see, and that's in spite of the locales being littered with so much anti-human architecture. Anti-human architecture is what I'm calling these weird sections of the map that can only be traversed by your sacred, which feels like it really encourages you to be on the sacred all the time and disincentivizes you from exploring yourself on foot, but it's whatever, I'm over it, we're moving on. The new mechanical iterations that Monster Hunter Wilds descends upon us with feel less focused, less meaningful than World's transformation of the franchise, and more like a pale imitation. I'm left feeling that the more mechanics and systems that Monster Hunter adds, ironically, the more it feels feels as though the series is shedding its skin, shaking off its old identity, rejecting tradition and embracing something new, something that is still overbearing, but markedly all too friendly all the while, barging into you with a smile on its face, nodding its head, trying to shake your hand. Get back, you don't know me like that. The works of From Software have shown that AAA games are allowed to be minimalist in their design and presentation again, that they're also allowed to be ball-bustingly hard, and in fact, that there's a real appetite for that kind of stuff, to the point that some people literally don't have anything to talk about other than the bosses in those games. It's rare that I say this about any video game franchise, but I would like to see Monster Hunter go back to its roots, to the lonely minimalism of Monster Hunters 1 and 2, but like good. To a time when I was not being thrown so many bones that I was buried in them, when I was not being intruded on by middling stories and characters during every fight, and when every monster was a bit of a fucking dickhead, when it felt like I was hunting monsters, and not mindlessly disposing of them like I'm playing an arcade fighting game on easy mode. It is unlikely that we will return to such a design philosophy, and more likely that the trend I saw beginning in Rise will continue. And that's also kinda okay, because despite my misgivings, it's still Monster Hunter. The worst Monster Hunter game is still better than the best Kingdom Hearts game. It beats the shit out of going to therapy any day of the week. I still had a blast. I will continue to have a blast over the course of the many generous free updates to come. I will continue to go blah 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. Aloud to myself in my room every time that one bit of the Windward Plains theme comes on, because goddamn, this might be the best soundtrack in series history. You see, even as the most off-putting entry in the series for me yet, it is so easy to find stuff I love about Monster Hunter Wilds. As long as I can hang out in a dense forest, as long as I can play medieval warlord dressed to impress, as long as I can pet that little pig, I think Monster Hunter is gonna be just fine. Thus concludes my guide to Monster Hunter Wilds for freaks. Can you believe I went an entire hour without talking about all the things I want the blacksmith girl to do to me? That's good feminism. I hope you'll take the wisdom with which I have imparted to you today and use it to craft your own armour of knowledge and tenacity. I have been Fudj. Soon, with any luck, I will be on the beach, purely for leisure. You can find Palette Swap and keep up with all our jokes and articles and other various goings on at Blue Sky here, Instagram here, and the other site if you're so inclined to look for us. You can also find me on Blue Sky here and elsewhere on YouTube here by just looking up Fudj, and who knows, maybe I'll even see you out in the wilds. I'm sure I'll be back in myself pretty soon, and viewer, with my skills and your newfound knowledge combined, they'll never see us come. Thank you to our legendary tier patrons: Sleep Science, Serial Lore Obeyer, Stephen Strom, Bijan Imadi, Strawberry, War Crimes Uwu, and Dr. Cruiser. Your support is so much appreciated, especially in these increasingly unprecedented times. How we took precedented times for granted. And I'll see you all next time.